To do our gluing operation, we first have to start off with an icy pole stick which has a round end at both sides. We take that to the sander and we sand the end off flush like that. And then we have to make a small modification to it too. We have to narrow it down just a little bit so that it can fit inside our glue jig. The standard stick is a bit too wide to get inside there, so we narrow it down just a little bit to be able to fit there correctly. For the next part of the operation, we're going to be working with this T88 glue, which is certified for aviation. It's an epoxy and it has a part A and a part B. This stuff is toxic, so you don't want to get any of it on your hands. You want to be wearing gloves before you start working with this epoxy. You get a little mixing cup, something like that. We're going to be mixing up approximately 5.5 grams of glue. You need a scale. I'm using a little jewelry scale here, and it's capable of weighing to 1/10 of a gram, or I don't know, 1.05 of an ounce, 0.015 of an ounce. So we start off, when we switch on, some of these little scales have a timer in them, so when we switch on and we start working, we have to continue working quite quickly, otherwise the scale will time out. So we need 3 grams of part A, or 0.105 ounces of glue if you're working in the American system. So there I have 3 grams of glue, and I follow that. I'll tear that and put the 2.5 grams of part B in, which is the darker one, and it's a little thicker too. It's 5:4 ratio by weight, and 50% and 50% by volume. So we're looking for 2.5 grams glue. So there we have the 2 parts mixed, and we have our 5.5 grams of glue. Now we take our stick and we thoroughly mix these 2 parts of the glue together. Make sure that everything is ready before you mix the glue together, because this glue takes about 24 hours to really set up, but you've only got about 40 minutes to work with it, and probably about after 20 minutes you want to start cleaning up this glue jig, otherwise it will start to set up on the jig. So we thoroughly mix that, and it gives off a little bit of heat as it sort of mixes together. And I keep ours in a warmer box because we're working in quite a cold climate here. So I've got a warmer that I keep the glue at about 25 degrees, and that way it works better. So the glue sort of becomes a sort of whitish color when it's thoroughly mixed. Now that it's thoroughly mixed, we start applying it to the glue jig. So the glue jig is enabling us to apply the glue just to the correct parts of the gusset and not all over the gusset, because we need to keep the weight down, and we also need to make sure the glue is applied everywhere where it should be applied. So you just systematically work through. I start from left to right, top to bottom, to make sure that I don't miss anything. And as the glue gets absorbed by the wood actually changes color slightly. It becomes a little darker. So by the time you get to the end, you can come back and just look and see that all the wood is sort of changed slightly to a darker color, to make sure you haven't missed anything. Now that you've placed glue everywhere, the color starts to change a little bit, it starts to darken, and you can just go back, make sure that you have a thin film of glue everywhere, and that all the areas where you should have glue have darkened. If they haven't darkened, you haven't put any glue there. Just make sure glue has been applied everywhere correctly. And when you're done, you should have a little bit of glue left over, because we have to apply some glue to the wood as well as the gussets. Now that you're satisfied that glue is everywhere on the gussets, you take a sheet of scrap paper, put it over the whole lot, and holding it together, turn it upside down. Now that it's upside down, you can carefully lift parts 1 and part 2 off like that, leaving the gussets stuck there like that. And that's why it was important that all the parts came out neatly. Now we can start putting the gussets into the wing rib jig. We start with WR1R. All the right hand side gussets go into the jig first. The left hand side gussets go into these pieces here. So let's take WR1R, put it in place. I use a screwdriver just to make sure that it centralizes and goes down. Some people use tweezers here to do this job. Number 2, number 3. So the glue is applied just to the correct places in the gusset. Number 4. You can see the slight color change there where the glue is. Oh, this is number 10. Sorry. On this side there's no number 7, there's number 8. And 14. So now we have all the right hand side gussets in place. We can start putting the wood down. We start off with number A. Put that on top of the gussets with the glue in them. Now when we come to do B, we have to place some glue between the join of A and B. Put B in place. Now starting here with C, you need to apply a little bit of glue to the end of the stick's elements. Make sure that the arrow is upright. This is followed by D. With D you have to be careful because there's an area here where you must not apply any glue. On E there's an area where you must not apply any glue, but you need to put a little bit of glue forward of that. That's E. This is followed by F. Put a bit of glue at the top of F, the bottom of F. Put that in place. The next one we put in is G. Same with G, a little bit of glue at the top and bottom. H. Making sure the letters are towards you and the arrows on the correct orientation. Right. J. Okay. And your glue should be nearly finished. If you've applied the correct amount of glue, this 5.5 grams is exactly enough glue to do the job. P, a bit of glue here, and P. Now just take surplus glue and make sure there's enough everywhere. Now that's done, we're going to start placing the gussets Start with number 1. Followed by number 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. 7. I should have put this one in the bottom. Well, 13, and finally 14. Now at this point you need to wash your glue mask and not leave it too long, otherwise the glue will start to harden. I use some recycled methylated spirits for my first wash. Just use a paintbrush, and I've borrowed this pan from the kitchen, but I don't think it's going back to the kitchen somehow. So put the metho in there, take your glue jig, place it and just let it soak before you put the other pieces together. Before tightening up any of these screws, make sure that all these cam locks are tight and all the elements are positioned correctly, and then screw down the locking plates. Now we're ready to clamp all the joints together. We can put the locator plate in, and we can make sure the gusset is in exactly the right place, and then place the clamping plate over the top of it and screw it down. Now you don't use a battery drill, you use a screwdriver like I have here, a small sort of a jewelry type screwdriver, and you do this by hand, because if you use an electric machine it will break the jig. It's too strong, so we just pull those screws up with a little bit of torque on the screwdriver. This is sufficient. You might want to try and do it both pieces together by putting the screwdriver through the hole that's provided there to make sure that the gusset is in the correct position. But do not over tighten the screws. The torque on a jewelry screwdriver is sufficient. So the locator plate makes sure that the gusset is exactly in the correct position, And the clamping plate, make sure that it's clamped evenly and properly. And this is clamping both the left and the right gusset simultaneously. And this eliminates the need for having any staples. Using staples in very thin timber like this can have the effect of splitting the timber. With this method, we clamp it and we leave it for 24 hours for the glue to set up properly before we remove the wing rib from the wing rib jig. For wing rib gusset number 7, we're making a right wing rib, so the gusset number 7 is not in place, so you don't need to use this locator plate. You can leave it out of this particular position, but make sure you clamp that down properly to glue the gusset on the opposite side. Now we get back to washing our glue jig. We put it in the dirty method or for our first wash and let it soak there while we were gluing the caps on the wing rib jig. So I normally wash these twice, wash it once in second hand method, and then wash it again in fresh method. So I take this method that I've used, put it in a container for cleaning the jig tomorrow, and the glue will sort of precipitate out of that. Now we take some fresh methylated spirits and re-wash the parts again. You are given 6 of these in case you do destroy them, but if you wash them, they should be okay.